Introducing the Fun With Hydroponics Venturi valve. So this is basically my 6th version, version 6A, that I've tweaked a little bit and post-processed a little bit with a drill just to get it perfect, so that the air intake and the throat diameter inside is well suited for deep water bubbles. You can see this one here is doing real well. This is the 50-cent Venturi made out of an aquarium valve. I had to post-process some of these with a little bit of a drill out. Like this one here, with this big old cucumber starting out, he can only go so deep. Watch this. You go a little deeper and it just stops. So I can't quite, I think I can reach that clip there. Let's see. I mean, it's sputtering, right? But you know, the water level is almost to the absolute top here. So I'm getting a little bit of bubbles, but not my preferred Venturi effect. You're right on the limit here of how far you can go. Now, but watch this. If I were to go ahead and put this on, I'm able to go all the way to the absolute bottom. And these tanks are pretty deep. I can't get my hand all the way down there. If I drop it, I'm gonna have to get a tong to get this thing out. Let me show you how it works here on this pump. Real good results, this Venturi valve here. And I'm right at the max here with the wire, but I'm gonna go deeper because I've shrunk wrap an extension there. And I'm on the very bottom, and it's still cranking out the bubbles. So if you want to go deep water, this is probably the way to go. One thing I like is the water is getting pushed around gently, as well as producing bubbles like an air stone. So you kind of get the 1-2 punch, the double benefit that just plain old air stones don't provide. They don't make any noise except for what you hear here is sometimes, you know, from the tube itself. Sometimes it sounds like a rattlesnake. I mean, it's just a little bit of that little sucking sound. And I love the fact that the bubbles are coming from so deep because the valve can overcome the hydrostatic pressure. So the deeper you go, the longer it takes for those bubbles to reach the surface. And during its transit, the outside of the bubble, where the gases are, slowly dissolve into the water. So the longer you keep them in the water, the better if you're trying to reach higher levels of dissolved oxygen. And you can see these tanks. This one's doing real good. It's putting out copious bubbles, but it's not nearly as deep. But you can see the water in all these tanks are very clean. No algae. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to add air to your hydroponic Kratky setups. I think you'll be able to survive the heat a lot better and prevent root rot if you get bubbles on your roots. Keep the dissolved oxygen levels higher. Give it a go. If you like to grow in large, deep reservoirs, let those roots expand, let the plants get as big as they possibly can. I would pick one of these tall, narrow trash cans over the totes simply because you have more depth for those roots to grow. Only thing is, once you get these plants a little more established, these are just kind of beginning. You're going to want to trellis them up onto something. I've got these bars above with a little shade cloth over my workbench here that I'm going to have to tie some strings in. After I prune this tomato, it'll continue to grow upward. But yeah, that's how it looks. Okay guys, before we totally abandon the idea of these little tanks, let me just tell you, these are probably the best in terms of just all-around use. I've got a video on that. I don't want to totally favor those large trash cans. I'll tell you why. Look at this. This is my tomato alley. It's going crazy. And guess what? They're all growing in those little 27-gallon totes. Got a few float valves hooked up to that blue barrel. Actually, I got 11 of them. I'll have to do another video on that. But you can see how well they're growing with just a little bit of space for those roots to grow. Now, it's cloudy right now, so we're not going to get a lot of flow. But if you look down here, you can see that we're using the 50-cent Venturi here. Now, look how shallow that water has become. I've got it set with the float valve at about that level. But you just don't need to go real deep with these kind of bins. So having a really optimized Venturi may not be that necessary. With these kind of bins, as you can see from the size of this tomato plant, it's going up. It's really going up. So tomato alley, not necessary to always have super deep bins. I think it's real fun to grow watermelon, squash, zucchini, and other plants in those deep bins, but you're only going to probably put one plant in those. Where here I can get 1 or 2. You generally have 2 tomatoes. Sometimes I even have more. Tomato alley. What a mess. Got to prune. Got to get airflow in there. All right, for some of you guys who want to go ahead and print these off with your 3D printer, let me give you a few tips. I've been through so many iterations of these deep water Venturi aerator valves that I think I should at least share some of the pitfalls and challenges that I've had so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes. And by the way, for those of you who don't want to make them yourselves, check out our online stores. We've got Etsy and eBay currently up, and you can get these there if you don't have time to make them yourself. But if you do have a 3D printer available and you want to spend the time, I would recommend several things. This one here is made out of PETG. PETG is a little more weather resistant than PLA. I think PLA is just a little more brittle. This should last a lot longer. This is called PETG. It's much more weather resistant. And I've tried TPU, but it was just a little too flexible, and the nozzle had a hard time printing these really narrow channels there. So I would recommend PETG if you're going to go outside with these. And if you're going to have an air intake stem like this, you're going to want it pretty rigid. So you're going to want to taper it here with a fillet into the body of the valve so that it doesn't snap off. This is not going to snap, I don't believe. And the other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you make the outer diameter of this air intake wide enough that it can accept various types of tubing, all 1/4 inch garden tubing or reverse osmosis type tubing, so that you have all sorts of choices, because you're always going to run out of tubing and you're going to have different types. So make sure it's about 5 mils in outer diameter across that stem. It doesn't matter if it's not exactly perfectly round. It actually might be a little better to have a little bit of irregularity or roughness, just because it'll hold that on just a bit better. Let me show you some video here of me twisting this tubing on. The other tip I want to share with you is it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect in terms of your diameter inside, the inner diameter of the throat and the air intake diameter, because when you print, you'll be printing this way probably, so you don't have to have supports, kind of like that. And you'll have a little support painted on here, perhaps if you use like a Prusa slicer. But when you cut it across, you're going to get layer lines, of course. And these layer, I mean, this is a thick enough thing that it's going to be hard to break this. Sure, you can make it a solid tube. It just doesn't look as pretty, but it'll work probably even better. But this PETG is pretty strong. So, however, the layer lines, remember, they do kind of make a little bit of rough, micro bumpy surface as the water's coming through this way. Okay, the shorter, steeper cone is going to the pump, and then the more gentle, tapered, longer cone is going out into the water. But right here through the throat, those little layer lines might slow down the velocity of the water just a little bit. The higher the velocity, the lower the negative pressure and the better the suck of the air into this aerator. So what I do is I just post-process it. I take a drill. In this case, I've used a 1/8 inch drill, and I just kind of post-processed it to get it nice and smooth. And same thing with the air intake, just to keep it nice and small. So there's a good ratio of the throat being much larger than the air intake. The other thing is you want to make sure that you measure with the caliper your pump. You're going to have to be aware that you're going to have to get over these ridges right here. So you're probably going to want to just make it tight enough that the water doesn't leak out when it squirts through, but it also sticks on real nice. So you're going to have to finagle that a little bit based on your printer settings and the filament you have. But you're going to want to get that on nice and tight like that. You don't want it so tight that it cracks the plastic, but you want it tight enough that it goes on good. And you can twist it a little bit. Let's see. There we go, just like that, a little twist. Man, that's on good. See, that's what I like. This is on good. It's not. You don't want it to come off. You just don't want it to come off. You don't want it too loose. I'd rather have it a little tight than loose. And this if you have the wall thick enough, it's fairly forgiving, even if you kind of use it a little bit. Those barbs are able to grab it and kind of on the layer lines, I guess, and just kind of hold it on. Now I print these at 0.2 or 0.3. They both work. Millimeter layer height on the PETG. Both of those work. So I like 0.3 simply because it's a little stronger. Well, that just about wraps it up today, my friends. I hope you have a great day wherever you are and wherever you're watching this from. So signing out from Fun With Hydroponics. You guys take care now. Bye.